At 45 years old, George Foreman became the oldest heavyweight champion in history, then walked away and made 10 times more money selling kitchen appliances than he ever did in the ring. $200 million from a product he almost refused to endorse. A grill with his name on it that outsold every piece of boxing memorabilia, every pay-per-view purse, every sponsorship deal from his athletic prime. The man who once terrified Muhammad Ali in Zaire retired from violence and became America's favorite pitchman. How does a fighter known for crushing opponents reinvent himself as a smiling grandfather selling countertop grills? The answer lies in a bankruptcy, a spiritual rebirth, and a single phone call that changed everything. George Edward Foreman was born January 10, 1949, in Marshall, Texas, a segregated town where black families lived on unpaved streets and worked jobs that kept them poor. His father left when George was young. His mother, Nancy, cleaned houses and took in laundry to feed 7 children. By age 15, George was 6'3", 200 pounds, angry, and directionless. He dropped out of school. He mugged people in Houston's Fifth Ward, stealing pocket change and watches. He drank Thunderbird wine on street corners and got into fistfights that landed him in jail overnight. There was no plan, no future, just survival and rage. In 1965, a Job Corps recruiter told him about a program in Oregon, free food, a paycheck, training. George took the bus west because it was better than another night on the corner. At the Grants Pass Job Corps Center, a counselor named Doc Broadus ran a boxing program. Broadus saw the size and the fury and put gloves on George's hands. Within weeks, George was knocking out every sparring partner in camp. Broadus told him he could be a professional. George didn't believe it, but he didn't have anything else. He stayed. He learned discipline. He stopped drinking. He trained 6 days a week in a cinderblock gym surrounded by Oregon pine trees, hitting bags until his knuckles bled, running hills in boots to build leg strength. Boxing gave him structure, identity, purpose. For the first time in his life, George Foreman had a reason to wake up. In 1968, George Foreman walked into the U.S. Olympic trials in San Francisco as an unknown. He walked out as the heavyweight representative for Mexico City. He was 19 years old, still learning footwork, still crude, but devastating. His punches didn't just land, they collapsed opponents. In the Olympic final, he faced Soviet fighter Jonas Sepulus, a seasoned international champion. Foreman knocked him down in the second round with a right hand that echoed through the arena. Sepulus got up. Foreman dropped him again. The referee stopped it. George Foreman stood in the center of the ring holding a small American flag, waving it for the cameras, a gesture that made him a hero to millions watching back home during a year of riots and protests. He turned professional in June 1969 under trainer Dick Sadler. The plan was simple: destroy everyone, fast. Foreman fought his first 37 professional fights in 4 years. He won all 37. 34 by knockout. Most didn't make it past the third round. He fought in smoky clubs in New York, arenas in California, parking lot rings in Texas. Promoters loved him because he sold tickets and finished early. Opponents feared him because he didn't box, he hunted. His style was relentless pressure, clubbing hooks, uppercuts that lifted men off their feet. By 1973, George Foreman had a record of 37-0 and a reputation as the most dangerous puncher alive. The only man left was Joe Frazier, the reigning heavyweight champion, the man who had beaten Muhammad Ali 2 years earlier. Their fight was set for January 22, 1973, in Kingston, Jamaica. Frazier was the favorite. Odds makers gave Foreman little chance. They were wrong. The fight lasted 4 minutes and 35 seconds. George Foreman knocked Joe Frazier down 6 times. It wasn't a boxing match, it was a demolition. Frazier came out throwing the same left hooks that had destroyed Ali. Foreman walked through them and landed a right uppercut that sent Frazier sprawling across the canvas. Frazier got up. Foreman hit him again. Down. Up. Down. The referee finally stopped it in the second round. Frazier's corner threw in the towel. At 24 years old, George Foreman was the heavyweight champion of the world. He defended the title twice in 1974, stopping Ken Norton in 2 rounds in Caracas, Venezuela, then annihilating Jose Roman in 1 round in Tokyo. Norton had broken Ali's jaw a year earlier. Foreman treated him like a sparring partner. Promoters scrambled to find someone who could challenge him. The only option left was Muhammad Ali, 32 years old, past his prime, coming off a loss to Frazier. Don King arranged the fight for October 30, 1974, in Kinshasa, Zaire. The purse was $5 million each, funded by Zaire's dictator Mobutu Sese Seko. They called it the Rumble in the Jungle. Ali talked endlessly in the lead-up, calling Foreman a monster, a mummy, a slow predictable puncher. Foreman said nothing. He trained in silence, hitting bags so hard they swung off their chains. Bookmakers installed him as a 4-to-1 favorite. Experts predicted Ali wouldn't survive past the 5th round. On fight night, 90,000 people packed the Stade du 20 Mai in suffocating heat. Ali came out dancing, then did something no one expected. He stopped moving and leaned against the ropes, letting Foreman punch himself into exhaustion. For 7 rounds, George Foreman threw sledgehammer punches at Muhammad Ali's body and head while Ali covered up on the ropes, absorbing blows and whispering insults. "Is that all you got, George? They told me you could hit." Foreman kept swinging. His arms grew heavy. His legs slowed. The Zaire heat and humidity drained him. Ali waited. In the 8th round, Ali exploded off the ropes with a 5-punch combination that snapped Foreman's head back and dropped him face-first to the canvas. The referee counted to 10. George Foreman had lost his title. The unbeatable destroyer had been outthought, outconditioned, and knocked out in front of the world. He left Zaire humiliated and confused. For the next 3 years, Foreman fought sporadically, wins over mediocre opponents, no fire, no purpose. He knocked out Ron Lyle and Joe Frazier in rematches, but the dominance was gone. In 1977, he fought Jimmy Young in Puerto Rico, a fight he needed to win to earn another title shot. He lost a 12-round decision in a slow, plodding fight that exposed how far he had fallen. After the fight, George Foreman went back to his dressing room, collapsed from heat exhaustion, and had what he described as a near-death religious experience. He saw a vision of God and heard a voice telling him to change his life. He retired from boxing that night. He became an ordained Christian minister, moved back to Houston, and started preaching in a small church in the 5th Ward where he once mugged people. He gained weight, ballooning to over 300 pounds. He wore cheap suits and spent his days counseling addicts, teaching Bible classes, and running a youth center. The boxing world forgot about him. His money ran out. By the mid-1980s, George Foreman was broke. In 1987, George Foreman announced he was returning to boxing at age 38. The press laughed. He was fat, slow, bald, and a decade removed from serious competition. Commentators called it a sad publicity stunt. His first comeback fight was against Steve Zuski in Sacramento. Foreman won by knockout in 4 rounds, but he looked nothing like the destroyer from 1973. He plodded forward, breathing heavy, landing one big punch at a time. Critics said he'd get hurt against real contenders. Foreman kept fighting. He lost 25 pounds, then 30. He fought club-level heavyweights across California, Texas, and Alaska, 15 fights in 2 years, all knockouts or decisions in his favor. His strategy was simple: take punches, wait for an opening, land one bomb. It worked. By 1990, George Foreman had clawed his way to a title eliminator against Evander Holyfield, the new heavyweight champion. Foreman was 41 years old. Holyfield was 27, fast, and undefeated. The fight went 12 rounds. Foreman lost on points but proved he could still compete at the top level. A year later, he fought Tommy Morrison for a regional title and lost again, another 12-round decision. But Foreman's popularity was rising. He wasn't the angry destroyer anymore, he was a smiling, self-deprecating preacher who made jokes about his age and his gut. Fans loved him. Networks loved him. He became a draw. In 1994, at age 45, Foreman got one more shot, a title fight against Michael Moorer, the undefeated IBF and WBA champion. No one gave Foreman a chance. Moorer was 26, quick, and dominant. For 9 rounds, Moorer jabbed and moved, piling up points. Foreman lumbered after him, landing occasional right hands but falling behind on the scorecards. In the 10th round, Moorer stood in front of Foreman for a split second, a mistake. Foreman threw a perfect right hand that landed flush on Moorer's chin. Moorer collapsed. The referee counted 10. At 45 years and 10 months, George Foreman became the oldest heavyweight champion in history. He held the title for a year, then retired permanently in 1997 after a loss to Shannon Briggs. His final record, 76-5, 68 knockouts. But his biggest payday was still ahead. In 1994, a company called Sultan Incorporated was developing a new indoor electric grill designed to drain fat while cooking. They needed a celebrity endorser. Their first choice was Hulk Hogan. Hogan's agent passed. They called George Foreman's agent and offered $40,000 plus a small percentage of sales. Foreman almost said no, he didn't cook, didn't care about kitchen products, and thought the grill looked strange. His wife convinced him to take the deal. He filmed a commercial in one day, smiling and flipping burgers, calling it the George Foreman Lean Mean Fat Reducing Grilling Machine. The ads aired in 1995. Within months, the grill became a sensation. Americans bought them for apartments, dorms, tailgates, and kitchens. It was fast, easy, healthier than frying, and compact. Foreman's image, the friendly preacher-turned-pitchman, made it trustworthy. By 1999, Sultan had sold over 30 million units. Foreman appeared in over 100 commercials, always with the same warm smile and casual charm that made him seem like everyone's grandfather. In 1999, Sultan offered George Foreman a buyout. They would pay him $138 million in cash to surrender his royalty percentage and end the endorsement contract. Foreman took the deal. Combined with prior royalty payments, the George Foreman grill earned him over $200 million, more than double his entire boxing earnings across 3 decades. The grill outsold every competitor. Over 100 million units sold worldwide. It became a permanent piece of American consumer culture. George Foreman, who once made his living punching people unconscious, became wealthier and more famous as a pitchman than he ever was as a fighter. He used the money to fund his church, his youth center, and his family. He named all 5 of his sons George, George Jr., George III, George IV, George V, George VI. He said it was so they would always remember who they were. He stayed out of trouble, avoided the scandals and bankruptcies that plagued so many former champions, and lived quietly in Houston. In interviews, he joked that the grill knockout was more valuable than any punch he ever threw. He was right. George Foreman is 85 years old now. He still preaches occasionally, still makes appearances, still smiles in the same self-effacing way that sold 100 million grills. His record as the oldest heavyweight champion will likely never be broken. Modern athletic commissions would never license a 45-year-old fighter today. But that's not the story people remember. They remember the grill. The lesson of George Foreman is uncomfortable for people who romanticize athletic greatness. The second act is sometimes worth more than the first. Foreman's willingness to completely reinvent himself, to go from feared destroyer to ordained minister to friendly television pitchman, produced returns that dwarfed his accomplishments in the ring. Most athletes retire and spend decades chasing the glory of their youth, doing autograph signings and motivational speeches, clinging to past relevance. Foreman walked away from his identity as a killer and became something entirely new. He didn't care if it seemed beneath him. He didn't care if boxing purists thought selling grills was undignified. He saw an opportunity, took it, and turned it into generational wealth. The grill made him richer than the championship belts. The commercials made him more beloved than the knockouts. The reinvention made him more successful than the dominance. George Foreman proved that the ability to evolve, to let go of who you were and become who you need to be, is more valuable than raw talent. He won the heavyweight title twice, 20 years apart, against impossible odds. But he won the second life by being willing to lose the first one. That's the real knockout.